What are you doing here?
I was caught off guard by a voice from behind, so I spun around. There was my ex-wife, clad in a formal black dress. Ha! It had been 17 years, but my ex-wife's gaze was as icy as ever.
You really have some nerve showing up in a suit unannounced.
She had a point. I'm sorry. I just thought if I could see our daughter looking happy, even for a moment. I was pouring out my true feelings. But then she laid it on me. It's out of the question. You promised you'd never see her again. That includes just looking. Please just go. She was right. I had made that promise. And if she insisted, I had to oblige. Got it. My bad for not thinking it through. I was the one at fault. So, it can't be helped. As I turned my back on the venue, that's when. My name is Mark Johnson, 47 years old. I work for a food service company where my main gig is delivering ordered goods to restaurants. Long ago, I came to grips with not having any standout talents. I'm not cut out for jobs that require sharp thinking or imagination to create things. Some folks look down on my delivery job, and sure, the pay isn't great. But what I dig is the interaction with clients and suggesting products that fit their needs, knowing indirectly that customers are getting joy out of it. I like my current job very much because I can feel such great joy even if it appears to be simple like that. Though, if I told my ex this, she'd probably call it sour grapes. I've been single and living alone for 17 years now. I'm not looking to remarry. I decided to ride solo a long while back. But even a guy like me had a family that mattered once. My ex, Alice, and I were college classmates. We were just part of the same crew, nothing special between us two, and dating wasn't on my radar. But after graduating, we ran into each other again and started going out for drinks together. Back then, I was a college grad working at a major ad agency. To be honest, I couldn't figure out why I got accepted. It was such a renowned company with a solid track record. I was maxed out just trying to memorize what I was taught and keep up with my peers, finding it tough to finish my own work within the hours, and ending up working overtime till the last train to barely make ends meet. Feeling inferior to my more capable colleagues was a daily struggle. Despite others envying the glamorous job, my days were anything but, deep down. Reconnecting with Alice was a genuine relief. She knows the me that couldn't hack it back in school. She was the sole comfort for my weary soul. Meanwhile, Alice got her foot in the door with the fashion company she's been dreaming of since starting college. She's a go-getter, a real career woman, and she totally got how hectic my job was. Maybe that's why we had such a blast being together back then. 3 months post-reunion, we were dating, and before we knew it, we were hitched. Tied the knot at 24, and we had a child a year later. Our daughter, Hannah. Alice loved her job, but pregnancy took its toll, and she chose to quit for Hannah's sake. Knowing how much she treasured her career, I swore to work my butt off for both of us. Armed with fresh resolve, I threw myself into my work more than ever. At least, that was the plan. Around the time when Hannah was about to turn 5, there was a massive layoff at the company, and I ended up being one of those let go. While it was hard to say that I did not work that much overtime, I prided myself on meticulous, error-free work. I may have been slow, but I kept my work quality up as much as possible. And I made damn sure not to neglect my family, cherishing every moment at home with Alice and Hannah, doing everything I could for them. But then, the layoff. I thought that hard work doesn't pay off. I didn't want to tell Alice that I had lost my job, since she had sacrificed her beloved job to devote everything to raising our child. But, living with family, it would naturally be strange if I didn't go to work. In such an extreme situation, the solution I came up with was to pretend to go to work as usual and hide the fact that I had been laid off. Looking back calmly now, I wonder why I did something so foolish. Hiding such a significant matter from my life partner, my wife, is something one should never do, and even if I tried to hide it, it would certainly come out eventually. But at the time, I was too desperate to realize such a simple thing. The day after I was told about the layoff, I went for a convenience store part-time job interview, a little ways away from home. I chose a convenience store because I had experience from my student days and thought I could pick up the work quickly. And fortunately, that experience paid off, and I was hired on the spot. From the next day, I dressed in a suit as usual to leave the house, then changed into my uniform. I worked my shift as a part-timer, and then changed back into my suit and returned home as if nothing had happened. This went on for about half a year. Alice, who knew nothing, continued to smile as always and really did her best with housework and parenting. Since she was someone who gave her all at work, I think she did her best at home too. But in hindsight, I'm sure she had stress piling up inside that she didn't show me. I was neither able to notice nor try to be aware of it. I, who could only think about not being abandoned by her, was truly a fool. About half a year into this fake part-time life. Of course, I was also looking for a full-time job and going to interviews, but times were tough, and it was hard to get hired. I couldn't keep lying forever, and there wouldn't be enough money for Hannah, our daughter, to continue her education. I needed to find stable work quickly, but the desperation of not finding anything was cornering me. Around that time,
Do you have something you're hiding from me?
after Hannah went to bed, Alice said that to me. I was inwardly startled because I had a big secret, but I figured there was no way she could know. I was so sure of myself. I had chosen a place over an hour away from my part-time work to ensure that neither Alice nor anyone else would spot me. And I had never once remembered acquaintances visiting the store. Maybe she was setting a trap, suspecting infidelity or something. Since she is jealous since our student days, it was entirely possible. So I said, "What are you talking about? That's impossible. You know, Alice, we've got our precious daughter now. There's nothing for me to hide." I thought she'd be reassured and back down, but she was different that day.
That's right. If a family member lies, they lose trust from their wife and daughter, right? It's absolutely impossible.
Her words felt oddly unnatural, but it was too late to correct them. "Yay, it's impossible. Believe me," I replied, my mind elsewhere. The next moment, whack, Alice stood up from her chair and slapped me across the face. It happened so fast I couldn't immediately understand what had occurred, but the anger on Alice's face in front of me was unmistakable, and there were tears in her eyes. "What? Why?" Startled by the slap, my voice came out stronger than I intended. Then she dropped a bombshell.
You big liar. The worst. You think I don't know anything.
Goosebumps ran down my body, and I could feel the blood draining from my face. This was not just teasing. Could it be that she knows I've been laid off and working part-time? Despite my premonition, I was too scared to put it into words. Meanwhile, Alice was shaking with sobs, tears streaming down her face. Then she said, "You're really not going to say anything, are you? I heard it 2 months ago. A childhood friend who came to our wedding saw you working at a convenience store. I couldn't believe it, but I was so worried that I had to see it with my own eyes."
And sure enough, just as my childhood friend said, you were there working at the convenience store, even though you were supposed to leave for work in your usual suit. I thought there must be some reason, and I believed that you would tell me about it someday. But you never did tell me until now. How long are you planning to deceive me like this?
Anger and sadness were mixed in her plea. I could feel her disappointment in me. I desperately tried to explain how I was targeted for massive layoffs, started looking for work right away but couldn't find anything. How I was too embarrassed to tell her, who was a career woman, that I had been fired. How I was so afraid of losing my family, that was why I couldn't tell the truth. But it seemed it was already too late.
It's too late now. I'm sorry, but I can't trust you anymore. I quit the job I loved and devoted everything to my family, yet I couldn't turn your trust. No matter how much you apologize now, it doesn't change the fact that you've been deceiving me for months. Even if I forgave you now, I don't think I could ever trust you again. I don't want to be with someone who only thinks about themselves and can't consider their family's feelings. A liar and jobless person like you would only negatively influence Hannah. I'd be better off raising her by myself. So please, let's get a divorce.
With those words, she presented me with the divorce papers. Of course, I apologized over and over again, begging her to reconsider. But once her feelings had drifted away, they never returned. Indeed, as she said, my actions, taken out of self-preservation, had created an irreparable situation. In the end, I had no choice but to accept the divorce. It was my fault that things had come to this, so I had no right to demand custody of Hannah. Feeling guilty for deceiving them, I also promised not to appear in front of them in the future. It seems that Alice had no intention of letting Hannah see her again. And so, at the age of 30, I lost my precious family because of my foolishness. All because of my own foolishness. Not long after that, I got a job offer from a company I had interviewed with before my divorce, and that's how I ended up switching to the food and beverage manufacturer I'm working for now. After losing everything that was important to me, I didn't need the title of full-time employee or a steady income either. Once I got the job, I worked hard, and that's how I got to where I am today. 17 years have passed. Hannah is now 23. I wonder if she's doing well at the age of a new working adult. What kind of job did she take on? I hope she is working hard at something she loves. Back when I was mulling over these things, when I delivered the products to our regular customers' restaurant.
Mr. Johnson, how's going? We've got a new recruit starting today. Mind if they come by to introduce themselves?
When my regular contact said that, I replied, yes, of course. But a little later, when I saw the woman who came out of the kitchen, I was at a loss for words.
Nice to meet you. My name is Hannah Miller. I'll be starting work today as a pastry chef, so I'm looking forward to working with you.
Miller was Alice's maiden name, and even without asking her name, I immediately knew she was my estranged daughter. It's strange, after 17 years. Perhaps that's just how parent-child relationships are. However, considering her feelings, I couldn't just suddenly bring up such a topic. I'm Johnson. I look forward to working with you. With such a non-committal response, I was reunited with the daughter I had longed to see again. Ever since then, whenever I delivered to that restaurant, the new girl Hannah often came to handle things. But without ever revealing the truth, 2 years passed by. She might have a new father, and I couldn't think that coming forward all of a sudden would be for her happiness. Besides, even if I don't tell her about our family connection, I can see her alive and well every week. And even as a stranger, I can look her in the eyes and talk to her. Compared to the 17 years of not knowing where she was or if she was doing all right, this was unimaginable happiness. Then, one day,
Mr. Johnson, Miller is getting married, you know.
that news came out when I was delivering. Yeah, is that so? Surprised, Hannah said a bit shyly. Yes, that's right. I plan to keep working, so please continue to support me, and she showed a bashful smile. Is that right? Congratulations, truly. I said that, fighting back the tears that were welling up. I could vividly remember the day she was born, when she could crawl, the first time she called me Dad, and her lonely expression just before our divorce, no matter how much time had passed. Even though we were estranged, the news of my precious daughter's marriage brought a slight sadness and immense joy.
I've been invited to the wedding, you know, at that new garden restaurant that just opened up. It's really stylish, isn't it?
The contact told me, but it was hard for it to sink in. Memories with Hannah, as far as I could remember, were swirling in my head. The wedding. I want to go. If possible, I want to see her as a bride with my own eyes. I want to say congratulations as her dad. Despite knowing I had no right to say such things, those feelings kept welling up inside me. I noticed she was about to say something, but to forget such helpless feelings, I said quickly, "Well then, I must be going. I hope it's a wonderful wedding," and I hurriedly left the restaurant. But months later, on the day of Hannah's wedding, I was standing in front of the venue. Of course, I'm not invited. I wasn't, but just to catch a glimpse, even if just for a fleeting moment, I wanted to see Hannah in her bridal gown with my own eyes, so I ended up coming after all. I knew the place and time from a casual chat with a contact, so I snuck in. Luckily, this venue also operates as a regular restaurant in a different section, so it shouldn't be too suspicious for non-guests to pass through. Still, my heart is pounding, wondering if I'll get caught. As the ceremony time drew near, one by one, people who looked like guests started to arrive. Whenever I saw a woman of Hannah's age, I thought to myself, could be one of her friends. I felt grateful to these women. How happy I would be if I could express my gratitude to them face to face, as Hannah's dad. While I was lost in thought, the arrival of guests seemed to cease, and I realized the ceremony had begun. After a while, I heard the sound of the wedding bells and tears naturally started to stream down my face. I pray from the bottom of my heart that Hannah has a happy life from here on out. That's what I was thinking when
What are you doing standing around here?
such a voice called out from behind, so I turned around. There stood my ex-wife, Alice, in a formal dress.
I thought it might be you, but didn't expect you to actually be here, in a suit, at this place.
Her words were valid. I'm sorry. I don't intend to talk to my daughter. Just wanted to see her in her wedding dress, if only for a moment.
That's impossible. You know, you betrayed your daughter and me. Remember, you promised you would never see her again. That includes even a glance. Please leave now.
And with that, I was told off. Indeed, I had made that promise, so I couldn't dispute when she said, "Understood. I was foolish to come. I'm sorry. It was all my fault." Frustrating, but there's nothing I can do. With that thought, I turned to leave the venue. And at that moment, "Mr. Johnson," I heard a voice calling me. Of course, I knew immediately whose voice it was. Turning around, there was Hannah, in a pure white wedding dress. I couldn't hold back my tears.
You came. I'm so happy. Thank you.
An uninvited business associate stands in front of the wedding venue. And for some reason, he's crying. Even though it was a situation where she might understandably be grossed out, Hannah said that with a smile. "No, congratulations, truly." Those were the only simple words I managed to say. There was so much more I wanted to say, but I couldn't.
This is my husband. We've been together since middle school, and he really gets me.
Saying that, she went out of her way to introduce me to the groom. He was also dressed in a spotless white tuxedo. She has grown into such a kind and well-mannered woman. Truly remarkable. I have to be thankful to Alice for that, even though she might be tough on me. Is that so? I'm truly delighted to see how happy you both look. May you have a long and joyful life together. I searched for the right words to convey my heartfelt congratulations without feeling out of place as a business acquaintance.
Thank you so much.
He seems like a really kind and refreshing young man. I'm sure he will make Hannah very happy. I had hoped just to get a glimpse of her, and here I was, not only talking to her but meeting the groom she would share her life with. I'm such a lucky man. At that moment,
Wait a minute. What do you mean?
Alice seemed to have a hard time understanding the casual conversation between me and Hannah. Unaware that I'm her real dad, I wonder if Hannah is confused about why her mom is so angry. Sensing that, I said to Alice, "Excuse me. I'm just someone who has been taken care of by her business at work. I'll leave you now." And with those words that didn't feel out of place for a stranger, I finally turned my back on the venue. But then, wait, Dad, there was no mistaking it. It was Hannah who had called out. I turned towards her, not understanding what was happening. Then, with tears in her eyes, she said, "Dad, I've wanted to invite you to my wedding so many times, but I could never find the words. Thank you for coming. I'm so glad you could see me in my wedding dress." Why? Both Alice and I, who had thought our daughter didn't know the truth, couldn't hide our surprise.
I was 5 years old, you know? There's no way I could forget my beloved dad's face.
She then tearfully shared the past 17 years when we couldn't meet, and the 2 years since we had been reunited. She had always cherished me, her dad, but didn't want to come to meet me out of respect for her mom, who was just as important to her. But she always hoped to see me someday, and she was overjoyed when we met by chance 2 years ago. But like me, she didn't know what the right thing to do was. My existence seemed to make her unhappy. An existence she might be better off forgetting. That had always been my belief. So hearing her true feelings made me so happy, I couldn't stop crying. Then Hannah faced her mom, Alice, and since she was an adult, she was able to get her mom's acknowledgement to meet with her dad freely. Although it meant we wouldn't meet often, mostly during work, being able to meet my daughter as her father was more happiness than I had imagined. Just because she had accepted me didn't erase the wrong of my lies to both of them back then. But what I can do now is not to lie anymore. From now on, I want to watch over Hannah's happiness without any deception,